Emma Holloway vanished on an ordinary night, leaving behind only her sheet music and unanswered questions, but it was Thomas Raines, her trusted neighbor and faithful church member, whose midnight confession would expose the chilling truth buried beneath Hallow Creek OS sacred walls. The town of Hallow Creek was the kind of place people often imagined when they thought of safety. Nestled between rolling fields and surrounded by thick woods, it seemed untouched by the troubles of the outside world. Families moved slowly through their days, greeting each other on porches and sharing homemade bread across backyard fences. The streets were rarely busy, and the only sound at night was the faint rustling of leaves or the hum of cicadas near the river. To those who lived there, Hallow Creek was not just a town. It was a comfort, a reminder of how life could be simple and good. At the heart of it all stood the church on the hill, an old stone building with a sharp steeple that reached into the sky. Its walls carried the scent of wood polish and candle wax, and its pews creaked beneath generations of families who had gathered there for baptisms, weddings, and funerals. Every Sunday morning, the bells rang out, echoing across the valley, calling people to a place they believed was pure and unshakable. For most, the church was more than a building. It was a symbol of trust, a sanctuary where nothing bad could ever truly touch them. But behind the stillness, there were moments that hinted at something unsettled. A few townsfolk noticed strange shadows that seemed to move in the churchyard after dark. Some claimed they heard footsteps in the aisles long after services had ended. Others dismissed these stories as the imagination of tired minds or the tricks of an old creaking building. Yet these small oddities planted seeds of unease in a town that was otherwise free of fear. Life moved on predictably. Children played in the fields, their laughter carrying on the wind, and shopkeepers closed their doors at the same hour every evening. Teenagers filled the diner booths, swapping stories over milkshakes, while the older folks gathered on porches to recall how the town had never truly changed. Everyone knew one another, and with that knowledge came comfort. It was a place where trust was not earned but assumed. Still, in the quiet of the night, when the bells stood silent and the hill was cloaked in shadows, the church seemed almost too still, as if it was keeping something locked away. The people of Hallow Creek never suspected that their sanctuary, the very heart of their lives, would one day become the setting of a truth darker than they could imagine. They did not yet know that beneath the calm surface of their beloved town, a story was slowly forming, one that would shake the foundation of everything they believed in. The church stood strong against the winds and storms of time, but it could not hold back the storm that was about to rise from within its very walls. What began as whispers and odd feelings would soon turn into something undeniable, something that would stain the peace of Hallow Creek forever. It was early autumn when the disappearance unsettled Hallow Creek. The air carried the faint chill of the coming winter, and golden leaves gathered along the sidewalks. Emma Holloway, only 16, had been walking home after choir practice, her sheet music tucked carefully under her arm. She had a reputation for reliability. She never strayed from her routine, never wandered off without letting her family know. When she failed to return home that evening, her parents felt a cold fear before the clock even struck midnight. They searched the dim streets themselves before contacting the authorities, their worry growing with every unanswered call of her name. The following morning, the town mobilized with determination. Volunteers gathered at the churchyard, flashlights and lanterns in hand, prepared to sweep through the woods that bordered the town. Neighbors who had known Emma since childhood combed through fields and riverbanks, refusing to believe she could simply vanish. Dogs were brought in, their sharp noses sniffing along trails that led nowhere. Each search party returned empty-handed, the silence of their efforts heavier than words. For the first time, Hallow Creek felt vulnerable, as though the protective bubble around their lives had cracked. Rumors began to take shape almost immediately. Some whispered of a drifter who had been spotted at the edge of town weeks earlier, a stranger with no connection to the people of Hallow Creek. Others quietly wondered if Emma had run away, though the thought rang false to anyone who knew her. She was a bright, steady girl who loved singing more than anything, her future already filled with hopes of leaving for college one day. The idea that she would abandon her family and vanish into the night did not sit right with anyone. Yet with no clues and no sightings, desperation made even the most unlikely explanations sound possible. Days turned into weeks, and still no answers surfaced. Flyers with Emma's smiling face were taped to telephone poles and pinned inside shop windows. Candlelight vigils were held outside the church, with prayers whispered into the darkness. The town's children grew restless and frightened, walking in groups rather than alone, while parents locked their doors earlier than ever before. Police officers widened their search, reaching out to neighboring towns, but the trail remained cold. The choir loft where Emma had practiced still carried the faint echoes of her voice, and many avoided it, unsettled by the emptiness it now represented. As the weeks stretched into months, the Holloway family withdrew. Their once lively home grew dark, curtains pulled tight against the stares of neighbors who offered sympathy, but no real comfort. Emma's mother stopped attending Sunday service, unable to sit in the pews where her daughter had once sung. Her father spent hours in silence, pacing the edges of their yard as though expecting Emma to return at any moment. The town adjusted, though uneasily, to her absence. Yet the unanswered question remained, haunting every corner. What had happened to Emma Holloway on that ordinary evening after choir practice? The silence of Hallow Creek deepened, and with it came the quiet dread that the truth was far closer than anyone dared to imagine. Years slipped by, but the mystery of Emma Holloway never loosened its grip on Hallow Creek. Time softened some memories, yet it sharpened the sense of unease that had settled over the town. The church remained at the center of life, its bells still ringing every Sunday, though the sound carried a weight it had never held before. Each chime reminded people of what was lost, of a girl who had walked through those very doors and never returned. Her photograph, carefully framed and placed on the church's notice board, grew faded under the passing seasons, yet it was never taken down. It became part of the building itself, like another window or beam, a silent witness to the question that no one could answer. Though no one spoke openly of it, Emma's absence was felt in every service. The choir seemed quieter without her voice. The pew where her family once sat remained empty, a shadow that no one dared to fill. Her name was rarely spoken aloud anymore, as though saying it might summon grief too heavy to bear. Yet in silence, her presence clung to the church walls, lingering in the way people shifted uncomfortably during sermons, or the way eyes darted toward the darkened corners of the sanctuary when the candles burned low. Whispers, though hushed, never stopped. Some believed Emma's disappearance had been the work of someone outside town, a faceless danger that had passed through and vanished again. Others doubted this, pointing instead to the chilling possibility that someone within their trusted circle knew more than they admitted. People began to notice small things they had once ignored. A car parked too long near the woods, a basement light burning late into the night, footsteps echoing in the church when no one was supposed to be there. Each observation added fuel to quiet suspicion, but without proof. It all remained little more than shadows. The Holloway family's absence from the church became its own wound. For years they had been at the heart of its gatherings, yet now their home was dark, their voices gone from the community. The congregation carried guilt, wondering if they had failed the family somehow, if they had not searched hard enough or prayed with enough conviction. The church, once a place of unquestioned comfort, grew uneasy in its role. It was still the sanctuary where children were baptized and couples were wed, but its stone walls felt colder. Some parishioners confessed to feeling watched while sitting in the pews, as if unseen eyes followed them during the quietest parts of service. As seasons changed, the town learned to live with unanswered questions, though never comfortably. Emma's face remained on the notice board, her absence lingering like a ghost in every hymn. What no one realized was that the silence around her disappearance was not simply the result of time or distance. The truth was already woven into the very fabric of the church itself, buried beneath years of ritual and prayer, waiting for the moment when it could no longer remain hidden. The night the confession came was unlike any other. Storm clouds gathered above Hallow Creek, thick and heavy, muffling the usual quiet of the town. Rain pounded against rooftops, and lightning illuminated the sky in sudden flashes that revealed the church on the hill, looming like a dark sentinel. Inside, the last candles flickered low, their wax pooling at the base as the minister prepared to close the building for the night. The pews sat empty, their wooden frames groaning faintly in the silence, and the stained glass windows shuddered under the wind. It was the sort of night when most sought comfort indoors, away from the storm, yet the church was about to become the witness to a secret buried for too long. The minister paused when the front doors creaked open. A figure stepped inside, soaked from the rain, shoulders hunched beneath the weight of years. It was Thomas Raines, a man the town had long respected. He was known for his steady presence, always punctual at services, always eager to lend a hand when repairs were needed. To the townspeople, he was a pillar of faith, someone who represented trust and stability. Yet on this stormy night, he did not carry himself with the quiet pride he once displayed. His steps were uneven, and his hands trembled as though something inside him was collapsing. Without speaking, Thomas moved toward the altar. His shoes left wet marks across the aisle, and each footstep echoed with startling clarity. In his hand, he clutched a folded piece of paper, its edges damp and wrinkled. He placed it on the altar and lingered for a moment, staring at the wooden cross above him as if searching for strength that would not come. Then he turned and left, his figure swallowed by the storm as quickly as he had arrived. The minister, shaken by the sudden visit, hesitated before reaching for the paper, his instincts warning him that what it contained would forever alter the town. The words scrawled across the page were uneven, written by a hand unsteady with guilt. It was a confession, raw and chilling. Thomas admitted that on the night Emma Holloway disappeared, he had been the one to lure her into the basement of the church. He described how he had convinced her to stay behind after choir practice, how he had led her into the shadows beneath the building where no one would hear. Fear, anger, and shame filled every line. His account, describing how an argument had escalated into violence, he claimed he had not intended. He confessed to hiding her body beneath the old storage room, buried under rotting floorboards and layers of dust where no one would think to look. The minister read in stunned silence, the storm raging outside as though nature itself raged against the secret finally revealed. He realized the truth had been sitting among the congregation for years, singing hymns, shaking hands, bowing in prayer. The trusted figure everyone admired had been carrying the darkest of sins. And it was in the sanctuary of the church, under the weight of midnight and storm, that the truth finally demanded to be heard. The morning after the storm, Hallow Creek woke to news that spread faster than the rainwater still trickling down the gutters. The minister, pale and shaken, had gone to the authorities as soon as dawn broke, clutching the damp confession in his hands. Police officers entered the church with measured steps, their boots echoing across the stone floor as they followed the directions written by Thomas Raines. The congregation, hearing whispers of what had been discovered, gathered outside in uneasy silence, their eyes fixed on the hill where the steeple cut into the morning sky. For years, they had prayed within those walls, never realizing they were standing above the very place where Emma Holloway's story had ended. The officers descended into the church basement, the air heavy with dust and mildew. Beneath warped floorboards and old crates stacked with forgotten hymnals, they unearthed the remains exactly where Thomas had said they would be. Time had left its mark, but enough remained to confirm what the town had feared, yet never proven. Emma had been there all along, hidden beneath the floor of the building meant to offer sanctuary. The discovery sent a wave of shock through the town, a final blow to the fragile hope that she might have been alive somewhere beyond their reach. Thomas Raines was taken into custody that same day. He did not resist, nor did he speak. His face was blank, drained of the friendly warmth people once associated with him. Neighbors who had trusted him for years now stared at him as though he were a stranger. It was difficult to reconcile the man who had repaired broken pews and carried hymnals with the one who had written such a chilling confession. Yet the evidence, unearthed with grim certainty, left no room for denial. Hallow Creek had discovered that evil did not always appear in the form of outsiders. Sometimes it sat quietly beside them, week after week, wearing the mask of faith. The town struggled to absorb the truth. Parents held their children closer, haunted by the realization that Emma had been taken not by some passing shadow, but by a familiar face. The Holloway family, after years of silence and unanswered questions, finally had the truth, though it arrived like a knife rather than a balm. Closure came at a price too heavy to bear. The empty pew where they once sat remained untouched, a symbol of both their loss and the town's collective failure to protect one of their own. The church itself was never the same. The walls still stood, the bells still rang, but the sense of safety that once wrapped around Hallow Creek like a blanket was gone forever. The sanctuary had become a place scarred by revelation, its echoes filled not only with hymns, but with the memory of what had been hidden beneath its floor. For the rest of their lives, the people of Hallow Creek would carry the knowledge that trust can disguise danger, and that even the most sacred spaces can conceal the darkest truths. The midnight confession had torn open the silence, and nothing would ever restore the peace that was lost.